God. Welcome to the Gore Club Podcast, everybody. I'm Steve Vessell.
Deathmetaldave.
I'm Ace.
And tonight we have a fucking amazing guest. Actor, writer on the Shudder Creepshow TV show. Okay, let's start that over. Actor, writer on the Shudder Creepshow television series. He's an animator for Disney for like the films like, I'm totally fucking this up.
Hercules.
The best
There'll
part
be
is,
a lot of
I always put the bloopers in at the end too. It's great. So, welcome to the Gore Club Podcast, everybody. I'm Steve Vessell.
I'm Deathmetal
I'm Ace.
And tonight we have a very special guest, Frank Dietz.
Yay!
Most of you guys know Frank Dietz. He's a writer. He's an actor, a writer on the Shudder television show. I fucking hate this. That's why I'm really good at editing, by the way. Creep show on the Shudder. Help, Ace. Somebody say something.
Shudder.
I'm going to give it to Tim because I can't
Actor,
see
writer on Shudder's Creepshow television series, an animator. He's worked in Disney films Hercules, Atlantis, The Lost Empire, Treasure Planet, Mulan, Mary Poppins Returns. He was the first person to be awarded the Artist of the Year award at the annual Rondo Hatton Awards, and so much more. We welcome you into the Gore Club Podcast studio, Frank Dietz.
Yay! Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here.
Thank you for saving my ass, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome.
That was just a joy to behold, by the way. I love how you guys have each other's backs, though. That's a great thing.
It's the magic of editing. You all have no idea what I'm doing.
I just went into host mode, like game show host mode. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, like
blacked out.
Well, we love having you on the podcast. Thank you. We brought you to town a couple of times. We can't get enough of you.
Well, thank you. I can't get enough of me either. Look, I have so much fun when I come into town. I mean, I started coming to Louisville because of Wonderfest back in 1998, I think was my first year.
That was my first year.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually 1997, the year before I was a guest, I came as a civilian. Like I came with Bob Burns and somebody else. And I just was like, I just wanted to come because I heard about it. I heard it was so great. And the year before they had Ray Harryhausen here and, and so forth. And I had just started working at Disney at the time, and I had just met Bob Burns, and I was just like, I want to ingratiate myself with this amazing man. So I came out to Louisville, and I attended Wonderfest, and just as like I said, like a civilian, and I spent way more money than I should have on model kits and stuff like that. But while I was there, they found out that I was working at Disney, and I was working on, I think I was probably working on Tarzan at the time. And so they asked me back. They said, we'd love to have you as a guest next year. And so I came and was a guest, and then now they can't get rid of me. Like they keep trying. They avoid my emails and shit. Like, right, like I can say shit, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't give a flip flop.
Okay, awesome.
So it's like a paying gig.
So I've come back almost every year, except there were like 2 years where I like working on a movie or something like that, and I couldn't go. But these people have become like family to me at this point. I mean, more so than my own family, honestly. And so I love coming to this town. And, when I found out about where, Gore Club, shows movies often. By the way, holy crap. Slaughterhouse.
Last weekend we showed Slaughterhouse.
Oh my
on
God.
the big screen.
I loved it.
Oh, man.
I loved it. It was so much fun. Anyway.
Puppets, practical effects. Come on.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely terrific and quite a wonderful surprise, actually. I guess it was part of what's so charming about it. But, you guys have had me over to do live commentaries for the movies I was in. And it's
at Wonderfest.
Yeah, and at Winterfest, yeah. So like 4 altogether, I think, at this point, right? But it's always so much fun, and you guys are great. You guys like
The goofs of Gore.
Yeah.
The goofs of Gore. That movie writes itself.
Oh, it does. It does. But we can't get enough because we love that you are a fan as well as anything. Like you said, you were a civilian the first year going to Winterfest because you just wanted to be a part of all of it, and you're like, oh my God, this is my tribe.
Nope.
This is my family.
Without a doubt. I mean, and it's funny. I'm right now. I'm writing a book about my experiences throughout all of this, and it's going to. I have a publisher. It's going to be coming out early in the year, next year, and. One of the things I was talking about, and Dana Gould and I have talked about, not to drop a name, but Dana and I have talked about this many times. It's like how when you're a monster kid back in the day, it was very often a very lonely kind of existence.
We've talked about that,
right?
Too. We're not cool. We're not getting laid.
Also, it's like, but you didn't have access to other people who had like minds. You know what I mean? Maybe if you were lucky, there was another kid or two that were in your hometown that also like went down to the corner to buy Famous Monsters of Filmland, every month, or that watched the same kind of movies you wanted to watch, etc. Sometimes not. And so, it's so nice now that because of the internet, just like so many things that there are wrong with the internet, one of the great things about the internet is we discovered that we are a community.
Or a family.
Like those of us who grew up loving horror movies and loving sci-fi movies and fantasy movies, now it's a lot easier to find other people that love this stuff. And I wish, I can't even imagine, like back in the day, I would go to a convention, in New York, like a Star Trek convention.
I was going to say, most of them were Star Trek or science fiction, really. Right. Unless you went to like a weekend of horrors, if you lived in New York or California.
Yeah.
For Fangoria or Chicago, if you were lucky.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm a little bit older, and so all there was there were Star Trek conventions. Thank you so much. I know I do. There were the Star Trek conventions, and then there was something called Lunacon, which was all sci-fi, and every once in a while another one would pop up. That would be. I met Whit Bissell because of one of these conventions once, which is like, if you don't know who Whit Bissell is, then you haven't watched a movie that was made in the 60s, 70s, or 80s your whole life, because he's in all of them. He's in absolutely every single fucking movie.
And what a hell of a name.
I know, Whit Bissell. How cool. But and I met Noel Neill, who played Lois Lane on Superman and so forth, and it was big. And Peter Cushing. I met Peter Cushing at one of these conventions.
Yeah, you have my attention.
I mean, and Ingrid Pitt was there too. This was a Famous Monsters convention in New York, and it was 1974, somewhere around there. And I got to actually talk to Peter Cushing, and shake his hand and ask him about how they did the creatures in Island of Terror, which was a movie that scared the crap out of me when I was 8 years old. And that was great, because that's the only place where I might meet other people that liked the same stuff I did, And by the way, I have to apologize to anybody else who was there at that convention with Peter Cushing and Ingrid, because there was a long line waiting to get his autograph.
Oh, no,
and
you were that guy.
And I was the guy that cut the line ahead of you. So I apologize, but I wouldn't change a thing. Sorry. I will tell you about meeting Christopher Lee at some point, because it directly tracks back to that Peter Cushing.
Oh, is this going to be in the book? Because I'm.
Oh yeah, it's in the book. Yeah, so I'll hold that for another time. But very different experiences.
but you're right. It's a lot different now than even it was when in the 90s when I was younger. You didn't have a lot of people that you found one or two, that could be part of your group and your tribe, and you can go out and you talk about horror films and stuff like that. But now it's just like there's a Facebook group where you can go argue about which movie's the best. Or
argue is the word.
The internet likes to argue about which Halloween movie is the best,
or the worst,
or the worst.
I think things like that.
Easy. When it first started, and there was just like the AOL pages, I just remember there being page after page after page of these guys arguing over whether Lon Chaney Jr. in Son of Dracula is actually Dracula or is he the son? And it was it's exhausting.
Right. It's just the title.
It's in the title. It's right there, right? But you have all these guys who are experts.
Alucard, by the way, damn it.
Yes, that's right. Count Alucard.
I love that role, and Lon Chaney's awesome in that part.
I think he is too.
I agree. When he's beating his coffin, trying to get it to go out, which makes no sense because there's
put it
water
out.
right there.
Put it out.
There's a lake of water right next to the coffin on fire.
You know what I love about that movie more than anything else? I love the fact that Dracula is being played like through the whole movie. It's like the woman that he's engaged to is actually playing him bad. Like she's just like she just wants to be married to him so that she can turn her like her other fiance guy into a vampire and they can live forever. She doesn't give a shit about Dracula.
No, she carts him over to her plantation to play. Yeah, to play.
That is a very hip idea for 1943 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and her costume is awesome, by the way, and the hair is amazing.
And those shots of him, like in the swamp, like look, Lon, I love Lon.
That was the first time I saw Dracula get shot. When he gets shot, he goes through him and kills her, and you're like, I was being a little boy, I was like, what the? My dad's like, don't say it. I was like, but
yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, no, I love Lon Chaney Jr. and I'm honestly sick and tired of every time somebody posts something about Lon Chaney Jr. Some jerk's got to say, oh, was he drunk or whatever? Hey, look, you know what? Everybody drank back then.
Everybody smoked and drank.
Everybody drank. It was like, and Lon worked his whole life. I mean, right up until he died, he was still working. I mean, granted, it was Frankenstein versus Dracula or whatever.
Or Spider Baby's great.
Spider Baby's terrific.
It's fucking great.
That's a great movie.
Yeah,
it really is. And so, like, I always kind of get like, all right, yeah, we know, we get it. Yeah, he was a drinker, whatever. But you know what? He was still working.
And he gave a crap about his craft.
Yeah.
From
Mickey Dolenz told me.
From the Monkees, by the way.
From the Monkees. Yes. I met Mickey on the set of Rob Zombie's Halloween. And then I went to the rap party and Mickey was there. And I wanted to talk to him because Lon had been on an episode of the Monkees. And I was like, hey, you worked with Lon Chaney Jr., right, on the Monkees? And he goes, oh, no, you don't understand. He goes, my family lived right next door to the Cheneys when I was growing up. And he said that Lon was like invited them over for barbecue like every weekend. Like he was super nice guy.
I want to see Lon Chaney in a chef's hat and a beard, flipping burgers. I would totally do that.
Oh, I don't think it was burgers. I think it was like you were talking about like these big racks of ribs and shit, right? Yeah.
It's like the Flintstones.
But he said Lon was wonderful. He was a lovely man that was like so kind and so sweet and so that's why I don't like when people focus on whatever the negative part of somebody's career was.
Unless it hurt someone else. Come on, man. He liked drugs, or they liked whatever. Right. Or they liked sex. It's different. But like as long as that person's not hurting somebody else, let them die however they want. Then die.
And I like sex, so I hope that doesn't come out.
You got to get out of here. But I mean, we obviously suck your dick all the time because of the three big movies that we love the most. And now it's funny you bring up the internet because now people can discover things like that. They don't have to wait for Mystery Science Theater or whatever, somebody to be like in a horror magazine. Now they can just find it. And we're talking about Zombie Nightmare, Black Roses, Rock and Roll Nightmare, and of course the Jitters. But like those movies are we talk about them all the time on this podcast.
Well, those
if
movies.
You know us in person, you can't not. By the way, we know Frank Dietz.
Well, that's the thing. All of those movies would have disappeared forever if it wasn't for the internet and certainly. I mean, Zombie Nightmare would been gone to the wind.
Yeah.
And Mystery Science Theater actually saved it.
It's like them and Joe Bob, man.
And I've talked about this before, but it's like apparently I talked to Frank Conniff, and he apparently found a VHS copy of Zombie Nightmare in a box at a friend's basement or something like that.
Wow.
And he'd never heard of it. He was looking at it. He goes, well, it's Adam West is in it and Tia Carrere's in it, right? So
that's marketable.
He watched it and he was like to at the time it was Mike Nelson, I guess, and those guys. It was just like, we have to do this movie, right? And then reached out to Adam, who was of course Adam was was so self-depreciating and so funny that he was like, yeah, I'll host your Turkey Day or whatever. And that changed everything because that led to, people discovered Zombie Nightmare. And I'll tell you,
they discovered John Fasano.
They discovered John Fasano.
That guy.
Yeah.
We can get to. I really want to talk about him, but let's get to that in a minute.
Yeah. Well, what's so funny is that when they did the teasers for the upcoming season of Mystery Science Theater, and I'm watching, and I was already a fan of the show, right? So I'm watching, and they're talking about Turkey Day coming up, and they have these little clips of things, and I see the Pee-wee zombie laying on the ground where he's like shaking and the smoke is coming out of his eyes and his mouth. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh yeah.
Oh baby. My God. I run to the phone, right? I call Fasano. He picks up the phone and he goes, I know. He knew why I was calling, right? And I was so terrified. I was just like, oh my God, they're going to eat me alive on this thing, right? And I remember,
I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead. I'm trying to hold it in.
That night,
fuck you, Steve. Go ahead.
That night, I had this gigantic jug of wine, right? And and Adam is there, and he's hosting the Turkey Day, right, and everything like that. And they start showing the movie, and I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Luckily, they had bigger fish to fry than me, really, on that episode.
Oh, yeah.
They were really going after Adam more than me. But they had some really funny lines about me being like, Detective Doogie Howser and all this kind of stuff. Because that's something is like everyone says I was way too young to be a detective.
Oh my God.
And I was too old to be a high schooler in Black Roses, right? So I can't win. But at the same time, I was just so happy. I loved it. I thought it was really funny. And then Comedy Central sent me to San Antonio because they were going to show an episode of Mystery Science Theater on a big screen to see if it worked as like, a theatrical, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Like a roadshow thing.
And so, well, more than that, actually. So they flew me to San Antonio to make a personal appearance because I was in a movie so bad that Mystery Science Theater needed to cover it. And I had to make a little speech and everything like that. And they sold out 2 theaters.
Yeah. Right.
And what that turned into was their movie, This Island Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Holy crap.
So Zombie Nightmare was the test to see if it worked on a big screen. And when it did, they decided to make the Mystery Science Theater the movie, which was This Island Earth, which is also, by the way, a movie I love.
I love that.
And I hope you got a cut from that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I bought a house with that.
Oh, yeah.
A little one.
Not.
It's a model.
Yeah. Well, it's about this big. Yeah.
It's like the Nightmare House.
Made of resin.
Popsicle sticks. What a time to be alive. Plus, they were excited that the cast was still alive, that they could talk to when it comes to Mystery Science Theater movies.
Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't like, Attack of the Crab Monsters or whatever, right?
You're the youngest person to be on Mystery Science Theater at that time. It was still alive.
I just love, when I saw that Adam was behind it, I was like, this is going to be okay. Because Adam and I stayed friends for years after making Zombie Nightmare together. And he was just so wonderful. He was so funny, and he was just so like, he was the first one to make fun of himself about stuff. And there's going to be a lot of that in my book, obviously. But the fact that he was hosting this Turkey Day where they were showing this movie that he knew was not a great movie, but he was still willing to be the host of the show. Yeah. Then I was just like, well, how can I not be fully on board for this? Yeah. For sure.
If Adam West loved it, you got to go with it.
Yeah. And that's the stories that people like to hear and they want to read. And especially when it comes to heroes like Adam West, it's like, that guy I want to party with. I don't want to party with this jerk. Or that person's a jerk or whatever. Those are the people like you I'd like to hang out with on a regular basis and not want to punch them in the face. Get their autograph being like, well, that sucked.
I've been there too, man. Like,
I think we all have.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, the unfortunate actors who really shouldn't be doing autograph shows.
Yeah.
Can I name names?
I'll edit everything.
We can bleep everything.
No, he's dead, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Robert Vaughn was a dick. Just going to say that right now.
Oh, man, see, and I'm such a big fan of like the, Magnificent Seven and things, and like, what was it, Galaxy? No, what was the Roger Corman ripoff?
Yeah.
Space,
Yeah.
version?
Galaxy of Terror.
No, are you?
No.
No. Oh, no. Oh, shit. I can't. Why can't I think of it all of a sudden? Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I'm like, oh, man, come on, Superman 3. Come on.
Sorry.
Superman 3. He's the best. I'm just joking.
Don't meet your heroes, Steve, besides Frank.
Well, sometimes you can. Sometimes they're great. I've met a lot of my heroes, and they were fantastic.
Yeah.
But Bob was. I'll tell you something really funny. I'll try as quickly as possible. So, I met him several times. Every single time, he was a just cranky bastard, right? Wow. But I had a photo of him and David McCallum, right? From The Man from U.N.C.L.E., because that was the show that I grew up with, like loving, right? The TV series, right? And Robert had signed it, just but he rolling his eyes about it. He was just like, okay, I'll sign it to Frank, whatever, and wrote to Frank, Robert Vaughn, right? So I had this picture of the two of them, and then a neighbor of mine, he was working on NCIS, right? And David McCallum was on that show, right? And so my neighbor saw the picture, and he was just like, "Oh, I'm working with David. Like, you want me to have him sign it also?" And it's like, yes, please, of course, obviously. So he took the photo, and he came back a few days later, and David had signed it. It was very nice, And he said, my neighbor said he presented it to David and said, this is for, a friend of mine. And David looked at it and said, "Oh, Bob signed this.
Oh, no.
How was he?" Like, okay, so David obviously worked with him enough years to know that Bob was not always the nicest guy in the world, or the most agreeable guy in the world, I should say. But then I said, now I'll fix this a little bit, because my old producing partner, Trish, met this kid, this young actor, who had done a movie, had done a play over in England with Robert Vaughn. And this guy said that Robert Vaughn was terrific. He was wonderful. He took him out to dinner with his family and all this kind of stuff. And that Robert Vaughn had said, "I was doing these autograph shows and I absolutely hated it." Which at least justifies a little bit that he didn't want to be there. He was probably just doing it because for the money. But he stopped doing it because he hated it so much. So
I would prefer
good plan.
that. I would prefer that.
Yeah, at least be honest about it.
Right. So then I gave him a break after that, but he was just. I never try to judge somebody on what could be their worst day. Obviously, right.
Right.
So
Sometimes
the first time I met Robert Vaughn, he was mean, and I was just like, okay, maybe it was a bad day, right? But then after that, because that was just like me as a civilian, just going to an autograph show and getting an autograph. After that, I was guest at these like Chiller Theater in Jersey, and he was there, and he was still mean.
Oh my God.
So then it was just like, okay, now I can't forgive him anymore. But years after, when I heard that story that Trish told me, and I was like, okay, well, at least he stopped doing it because he realized that. Just remember, folks,
just not for you.
that if you are doing an autograph show, these people come up to you and they want to meet you and they want your autograph. It's because they are the reason that you are there to begin with. So if you don't love doing it, don't do it. It's
Absolutely.
that simple.
Yeah.
And when you meet, like Katie said, when you meet your hero and they're garbage, you're just like, guess what? I'm not going to watch that this year.
Exactly.
I'm not going to go support that movie if they're still making films. But let's talk about an amazing person. Let's talk about John Fasano.
Okay.
You guys
Love
grew
to.
up together.
Yeah, we did.
How did all this start? And we're talking about and I talk about John Fasano. We've talked about him many times, and we've done just the brain and the creativity of both of you coming together. I bet that was awesome.
Okay. So
Two nerds.
So we grew up in the same town, Port Washington, which is on Long Island, New York, and he was a chubby little nerdy kid with the glasses that probably had the Band-Aid holding it together in the center, right? And I bullied him. Because there were other people bullying me.
I gotta go.
No, I mean, we're talking about elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay. And I honestly, I don't really remember if this actually happened or not, but for some reason it is in my head that this happened. Because I was a bully. I mean, I hate that I was, but I would grab his his book bag from him and run it through dog shit on the side of the thing, right?
Whoa!
And
this is like it.
Yeah, and for some reason, and I honestly don't know if this actually happened, but I have this in my head that one day, when picking on him, an issue of Famous Monsters of Filmland fell out of his bag. And of course, immediately, I'm like, oh, you like monsters?
I don't hate you.
Yeah.
Let me wipe this dog shit off you.
And I, like I said, this could be like some weird, fever dream kind of, memory that didn't happen. But I feel like something had to have happened where I found out that he liked monsters. And once that, like we were saying before, it's like the few people that you can meet in your town, in your small town back then that like monsters, well, then you're automatically friends, So then we became friends and we would we would basically build an Aurora model kit, right, of the creature from the Black Lagoon, but then we would film it while we lit it on fire.
Oh no!
My God.
We all did that too. I used to roll stormtroopers down a hill on fire.
What?
Yeah, it's a boy thing.
We once took a Major Matt Mason, who was like this kind of cheap knockoff of G.I. Joe, right? He was a lot smaller though. He was only like 6 inches or whatever, and we tied helium balloons to him and let him go, and we thought that he would come down. But he just left. And I always imagine that somewhere like in New Jersey, all of a sudden some guy's having a cookout, and this Major Matt Mason comes flying down and lands in the middle of his grill, right?
And he's just pissed because you ruined his dinner.
Oh shit!
I mean, we used to just tie M80s to the little parachute guys.
Oh, yeah.
And then, light them and throw them off the roof.
So many toys we used to blow up, burn.
Oh, yeah.
Just, yeah.
That's
So
money.
M80s are a child's
meanwhile,
best friend.
of course, those Aurora model kits. Now, if I had those now,
There's
they're
a
worth
stack of
a
them. Are there?
fortune. Those are originals too, right?
Oh, I don't know. Those were a gift. They say Aurora. So
Well,
instead of like
but those look like the original kits.
yeah, those are not polar lights. Those are Aurora.
Yeah, those are original Auroras, dude.
We're gonna have to keep an eye on this guy.
Don't blow up Steve's toys.
Well, no, listen. Both of my unions were on strike all year. If you want to pass one of those over to me, I'm going to hit eBay immediately.
Oh, you'll just build it and set it on fire. Don't lie. Just for good old times.
You got me for sure. But John and I became friends. We were in the drama department of our town, basically, the Port Washington Play Troupe. So we did plays. I directed him in El Grande de Coca-Cola. But then you get beyond that and you move on. And I moved to Astoria, Queens, with Leanne. And one day I was working. was working at because I still wanted to make movies, but I was not in a position to be able to make movies because I was where I was living and so forth. I mean, really, the movie making back then, it's changed since then, but back then it was all L.A. There was television in New York, but I was working for this guy. He was a crazy inventor, right?
This is gonna be good.
Oh no, he was specifically a crazy toy inventor. So he had a place in upper west side of Manhattan, an apartment that he worked out of, where he was developing all these toys. He thought he was going to be the next like Milton Bradley, right? But he was a little crazy. He was also, by the way, I don't want to say his last name because exactly, but he comes from one of the biggest, like, legendary families in Universal movie history. Yeah. Starts with an L. You could probably figure it out.
Oh, okay.
His last name was Geppetto.
What the hell?
Anyway, but he was nuts, right? He was like creating all these like games that he was going to do out of his apartment, right? And one day I'm working there and I don't even know how John got through to me there. I get the phone call and John Fasano says, "Hey, it's John Fasano." I'm like, "Hey, man, how you doing? Like, haven't seen you in like 10 years. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Listen, I wrote this script. I wrote this horror movie and they're going to be going up to Montreal to film it." And he said, "There's a part in there that I wrote that I think that you'd be really good for if you are interested in auditioning." And I looked over at my boss sitting over there who was creating a board game that you played with real cheese. And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? I think I would very much like to audition for that movie."
That sounds that sounds awful. But that's okay. Go ahead.
So I
Shoots in Velveeta.
They sent a messenger over with the script, and I was like, right away, it was just like, the character's name is Frank. Well, okay, I guess you really were thinking about me when you wrote this, John. But I had to audition. I had to audition for the I say director. Right now I'm doing air quotes when I say director. In fact, anytime that I say director when referring to Zombie Nightmare, there are going to be air quotes. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because Jack was just not a director. But he liked me, and he said yes. And so I was just like, holy shit. Like, I'm finally like going to be in a legitimate horror movie, as an actor. And that is what started my movie relationship with John Fasano. Even though John wasn't the director, he was the writer, even though he doesn't get writing credit on the movie because of a Canadian like film thing. But then we made, 3 more movies after that together, all in Canada. And John and I had a complicated relationship. Look, I loved the guy and I owe my career to him, honestly. I really do. But he, I never thought that he was a good writer.
That's fair.
I mean, that happens.
I didn't.
It's the
I thought
that he's able to come up with
yes,
are great.
no, he had great
like.
ideas, but his dialogue was always really just so sophomoric. It was just so like I used a joke when we did a Scripts Gone Wild version of Zombie Nightmare.
For those that don't know what Scripts Gone Wild, can you explain that real quick?
Yeah. It's a charity show that we do in LA where we read a script and we bring in a whole bunch of like cool actors, and it's usually a script from a famous movie. And it's always for charity, but we're drinking while we're reading it. And so if we flub a line, we have to take a sip. If we miss a cue, we have to take a sip.
How did you not come up with this, Dave?
So the third act is always really good.
Yeah, the third act. Barbara Crampton, you gotta. You gotta step it up.
Barbara's done a few of them.
I know she has. Yeah.
I love her to death. Barbara was in the second movie that I wrote that got made. It was called Cold Harvest. It's like a sci-fi western, and I didn't even meet her because they shot it in South Africa. I think I didn't meet her until like oh my god, like 15 years later, and she is a doll. Oh my god, I love her so much. But anyway, John, I always thought that John's dialogue was like. Not so good. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to Sean Levy, who is now one of the biggest producer directors in Hollywood, who was in Zombie Nightmare, he'd be the first one to say, I can't believe I had to say that dialogue because it's just like so embarrassing. But John had great ideas. I loved the way he thought. I just wish I could have rewritten all of the dialogue of his movies.
It's like, these boobs are great, monsters great. Why am I saying this?
Oh my God. It's one of the things I've been writing in the book, is that Rock and Roll Nightmare, which was the second movie that we did, the one with John Michael Thor.
I was going to mention the Thor.
Yeah, Thor. Thor was awesome, although just before I talk about what I was going to say, he's a super nice guy, just a super nice guy. He had the greatest energy. He replaced the zombie. Like we had Pee Wee Piemonte was the zombie for the first half of a shooting.
You can't tell,
you can't tell at all, right? Oh my God, right? I know. We had a fun time with that at the live commentary show, right? Yeah. But John Michael Thor was just so much fun, and then we did Rock and Roll Nightmare like almost immediately after Zombie Nightmare. Wait, where was I going with this? Now I get so confused. Oh no, I know. Sorry. So, but John's dialogue was I felt like in that charity show we did, I had to say did a 14-year-old write this dialogue? Because it's like pee-pee jokes and dick jokes, and it's just like it was just so easy. It's such an easy thing to do. And
Kevin Smith makes millions off the exact same
thing.
I
know. And John actually got better as he once he got to LA, and he wasn't writing like indie horror movies anymore, Although in another 48 hours he got to write for Eddie Murphy, so of course there were going to be dick jokes in that, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He went on to write really good scripts. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Well, listen, he wrote 3 drafts of Alien 3, right?
This is the early before they ever had David Fincher on.
Yeah. When it was Vincent Ward, I think, right? And Sigourney Weaver didn't want to do the movie, all right? But then she read John's script, right? And was like, oh, okay, I like this, I'll do it. Right, but then the directors switched, and it went, from Vincent Ward to David Fincher. David Fincher brought his guy on, who then did 3 drafts. After that, they showed it to Sigourney, and she was like, "Now I don't like it. I don't want to do it." So they had to actually bring John back on.
Needs more pee-pee jokes.
Alien pee-pee.
Yeah.
And finally, John gave them a draft that Sigourney was like, "Okay, I'll agree to it," and she signed on.
That's amazing.
Like that. Yeah, I know. And this is the kind of shit that happens in Hollywood all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. But John and I had such a funny relationship. Like I know he liked me because he called me his, oh my God, what's his, I'm trying to think of the actor now. I think I had the same problem remembering it when we were doing the live thing, but,
Crap, I can't remember.
But John Ford is an actor that he had in all of his movies. Like, it was almost like a good luck charm to him.
Oh my God, forget it.
There, exactly the same. So that
Katie and I were having this conversation the other night, and she brought up the name, and I can't remember it. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I was that guy for John. So he'd put me in all of the. He'd always have me apart for me in those movies because I was like his sort of good luck charm, And when we then John had amazing success after we finished The Jitters. And he went out to LA and he sold a script to Morgan Creek immediately, for 6 figures. And then Walter Hill liked him. And so Walter Hill, that's how he got the Alien stuff, right? So I basically followed John Fasano out to LA. My wife kicking and screaming the entire way. And I was just like, I'm gonna land something just as fast as him. No, didn't work that way, right? So I couldn't get anybody to read my scripts or anything like that. So in the meantime, John, this was around the time that there was this weird subculture going on in film where these guys were making feature-length movies on Super 8. And they were getting distribution, right?
Ace just perked up.
I just watched one.
Mark Pirro, I think his name was, did the Curse of the Queer Wolf and an American vampire in Poland or some he made I can't remember a Polish vampire in Brooklyn. It was called. That's right. So John thought this would be kind of cool for us to do this, to make a Super 8 movie, because there was a place in Burbank that specialized in Super 8 sound, right? So John basically said, here's $10,000, make a movie, right? So I wrote a script that to this day I still love, which I told you guys I'm going to send to you so you can watch the finished version, called Spider Bite. And we used the technology that this company had created, because what they did was they built a blimp. And if you don't know what a blimp is in regard, I'm not like a dirigible, but a blimp is a box that your camera goes inside, whereby you can't, when you're filming something, the sound of the motor is muffled so that it doesn't interrupt the dialogue that you're shooting, right? So they were all proud of this. We built this blimp for Super 8 sound, right? So John thought that was cool. So he's like, let's make a Super 8 movie, a horror movie. So I wrote this movie, Spider Bite, and made the movie in 3 weeks. The only thing that went wrong was that about halfway through or 3/4 of the way through making the movie, the camera started to skip frames, while we're shooting. So it's and we're this is not good, right? And you got to realize too, I brought in actors. I brought in Doug Silverstein from the Jitters, and this guy I grew up with, Robert Radazzo, to play this creepy spider guy. That's the sort of the monster of the movie. And he was from Chicago. So we only had him for 2 weeks. And it was this we didn't have any kind of, we didn't have any extra time. So when this started happening, we're like, oh, crap, right? So we bring the camera back to the guys on Magnolia, and we're like, it started skipping frames. And they're like, oh, no problem. We'll just give you, here's another camera, put it back in the blimp, right? Get 2 days in, it starts doing it again. And the problem turned out to be that, as smart as it was for them to create this blimp, what they didn't take into consideration was that it was getting so hot in there.
I knew it.
That it was basically blowing out the motherboard inside the camera and destroying it. So I spent the last week of making that movie as the writer-director, in a complete panic, right? because I only had maybe 20 seconds that I could get clean before it would start doing that.
Holy shit.
So I'm shooting these scenes, and I'm in my head, I'm having to edit it in my head while we're shooting it. Thinking, okay, I got 20 seconds of that. What can I cut to when I go to edit this? And oh my God, it was how I lived through. Yeah, exactly.
Holy crap.
Exactly. So how I got through that, I don't know, but I did. And we finished the movie, and it was really good. I still think it's really good. But then John buried it. He buried it because he had done another 48 Hours and Alien 3, and needed tax write-offs. So that was $10,000 that he could say, I put it into this movie and it's never going to be released.
Oh, man.
I know. It sucked. Luckily, there is still an existing copy of it. But when John passed away, I have no idea where the original masters were. So I do have a copy of it, but it does have the disclaimer at the bottom that's like for previews only or whatever, you know.
We're still excited to watch it, though.
Oh no,
Yeah.
You will love it. You guys will love it. I guarantee you guys will love it. It's good. It's quite good. I was telling Steve earlier that Tim Lucas, a video watchdog, saw it and he loved it. He actually said something to the effect of, you know, it's a shame that we never got to see the other movies that Frank Dietz would have directed. So I'm very proud of it. I wish that I could have access to the masters and put it out there. You know, I guarantee you, it's the best Super 8 sound movie you've ever seen.
It's the best edited movie you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, every 20 seconds it's got a beautiful
Masterclass.
cut.
Jeez.
Well, thankfully, that only happened in the last few days of shooting. The rest of it it didn't have that issue. But John did that. You know, John gave us that money, $10,000, man. You know, and we did the very best that we could with it. And like I said, I still think it's terrific. And then after that, you know, John and I kind of we had a little bit of a falling out.
I can see why.
You know,
I mean, yeah.
Well,
Or was there something else? You don't have to talk about
it was a lot of things. It was a
Okay,
lot
you don't
of
have
things.
to.
No, and I don't need to extrapolate on that. But I'm very happy that toward the end, like when the movies from the 80s started to find this new, you know, this surge of interest.
Yeah.
Like, you know, John and I became friends again. And because we were talking about these movies and we were doing commentaries for the Blu-rays or whatever.
All those memories and stories. They're like, oh my God, you.
Let me tell you something really funny though about Zombie Nightmare in particular. So like I believe me, I don't give a shit if Jack Brabman, you know, cares that I thought he was a shitty director because he was. But
sorry, Jack.
John, but John told me that Jack had died, right? And I was like, oh, well, you know, okay. Right.
Oh, well.
So we went to, then it was Scorpion or I don't remember the company that was putting out Zombie Nightmare on Blu-ray, right? They had me and John come and to, you know, to do the live, do the commentary for the Blu-ray. And, you know, we first recorded these little videos of us talking about making the movie, right? And we were talking about how what an unbelievably sucky director Jack Brabman was, right?
Thank God he's
And
dead.
then yeah, because he's dead, right? And then we get down to record the audio, and the producer goes, "Oh yeah, well we have Jack on the line," and John and I look at each other like,
Oh no!
Shit.
and Jack gets on the line, and we were like, "Hey,
So good to hear from you.
thought you were dead." And meanwhile, all I'm thinking to myself is that, like, we just spent like an hour upstairs talking about what a shitty director he is that's going to be on this thing, right?
The only thing you can hope for at that point is
man.
that he possibly dies before
Before
the release.
it comes out, yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so glad you're alive.
Oh my God, that I think of all the years that I knew John. There were two times where the look on his face will stay with me forever. One of them was that right there when they said, "No, we have him on the phone right now." You know, you could talk to him, right? And John Pisano is just like, my God, right? The other one also involved Jack, though, because when we were shooting Zombie Nightmare and we were shooting this scene where Sean Levy gets killed by the zombie, right? And
I'm sorry, I love those scenes.
so Jack is directing go the air quotes. And they do the master shot, which is the shot where you see everything. It's a wide shot. You see everything in there. And then normally in a movie, you shoot a master shot and then you go in for what they call coverage, which are the close-ups of everybody, right? So they shoot the master shot of this scene. And then John, even though he was the writer, he was kind of the second AD also on the film, goes to Jack and said, okay, well, I think we got that. What shall we move in for coverage? And Jack, I was standing right there. And Jack just goes, we see the same thing in the long shot. And I remember John turning around and looking at me with this look on his face,
Never
he
again.
he had just seen something so horrifying, right? Like his eyes wide open, his jaw open, right? And that's when we realized, hey, Jesus Christ, we are not making Sunset Boulevard here, folks.
Zombie Night.
So John Fasano made 3 movies about heavy metal horror.
Yes.
And
that concludes part 1 of our Frank Dietz episode. Come back for part 2. Stay tuned, Gore Clubbers.
That's awful.